Okay, on a CNC beam press, your PLC, your HMI software, it's all touchscreen, and we'll go over some basics here. You have your emergency stop here. You'll have your emergency stop up on your press as well. You are able to run it in 3 different modes. You have semi-auto, you have manual, and you have auto. When you're setting it up, you'll set it up in manual. And then once everything's cutting right, you can switch it to auto and run it sequentially. Okay, when you're setting up, you got to go to setting to set up your die, get it to the right height. Then you switch it back to cutting. Your motor on, your motor off, power on, power off. And this is for your light curtain, photoelectric switch. Okay, you can turn it off for setup and then turn it back on for full auto. This is your main screen. Actually, when you first turn it on, you'll come here, hit your enter, and make sure that before you start to do anything, make sure both of your emergency stops are off. This is one of the biggest calls we get. Somebody will lean against this. The press doesn't work, the press doesn't work. Okay, there it works. Okay, somebody lean against that, just twist it, and it'll pop back out, and you'll be good. So, clear your settings. This is your current output. And so you can see how many times the press has gone up and down. Your output setting times, you can set that. Okay, if I want to do 50 pieces, enter. There we go, set for 50. You can see here it says manual. If I switch down here to semi-auto, it'll change to semi-auto, back to manual, and to full auto state. For your rollers at the back of the press, you can see some rollers back there. For your rollers, you can manually forward, manually back, and this will move your material in your press forwards and backwards. Your third, you have an emergency stop here, one on the press as we said. You also have one here in your touchscreen. So you would start cutting by pushing this. You have parameter settings here where you can set your rising height. Your rising height is how high you want the beam to return after each cut. If you're cutting a die, okay, if we're cutting a die like this, there's no sense in having it go all the way up here in full automatic mode. It's just you're wasting time for it to rise up instead of just coming up about an inch, half an inch above your die itself. So that's your rising height. Your cutting depth. You always want to make sure this is at zeros when you first set up a new job with a new die and new material. Every time you change your die or change your material, you'll need to reset your press. Otherwise, you're going to end up driving a die all the way down into your plastic, your cutting board, and it's going to be hard to get out. It might ruin the die, might ruin the cutting board. So change that to 0, you do a test cut, and then you progressively start adding more pressure. Okay, you don't want to add a bunch of pressure at one time. You've got to go up periodically. Your pressure delay. Pressure delay, something you probably won't be using, but if you, let's say, had a heat plate on your press and you needed to go down and you needed time to seal something like, let's say, a mylar balloon. So it'd go down, it'd sit, so that the portion of your die that's meant for sealing can seal the mylar die, and then finish the cut and move back up. So most of the time you won't be using a pressure delay. Your feeding distance. After each cut, Okay, come down. Now this would be top mounted in full automatic mode, but if you had a die that was coming down and cutting this, and if this is let's say 15 or 20 centimeters, you're going to want to be 20 and a half. So after it cuts, you want to move the material forward just a little bit wider than your die itself. So that's what your feeding distance would be. Feeding delay. Sometimes when you've got a whole row of, let's say, 6-inch circles, well, 3-inch circles all the way across. So it's going to come down and cut. Your material is going to advance. You need time to pick up all of those little circles before it cuts and advances again. That is what your feeding delay is for. Okay, in auto feeding, this is how fast you want the material to move forward after you cut. Okay, so you can see it's how many millimeters per second that we have here. And that's just speed-wise. Some materials you can push quickly, some materials have to push slower. Just flexibility of the press lets you do whatever you need to do. But that is your auto feeding right there. Here is your signal query. But this here screen in certain operation will tell us, okay, if the signal is being sent from the PLC and if it's being received by the position sensor or the directional valve, rising valve, which is the position sensor. So we can see if the it's meant for diagnosing. It's very, very handy. We're one of the only ones that use a system like this. You can see on the when I hit the differential valve, I can see that the signal is being sent. The cutting valve, that takes care of that. For setting up a new die, you put your material here, okay? You put your die on top of it, and you will turn your press on. Okay, we're gonna switch this to setting. Okay, and when it's in the setting mode, you push both the green buttons and they'll come down and rest on top of this die. Okay, it'll just come down and it'll just set on there. You can't give it too much pressure, it's not going to push all the way through. So by pushing both of these, the die will come down and just sit on top of your die. And then at that point, you'll adjust your position sensor here, okay? And you just want it to be till you hear the click. You hear that click, you'll see this is your rough position sensor, okay? And right here, let's see if we can, you can see the wheel inside of there, okay? That right there, you want to just barely, okay, get to that point, okay? Then you'll tighten that. That locks your rough position sensor in place. So it's going to go to this point when it's cutting, and it's going to stop. Okay, now with the die sitting in place, and you've set your position sensor, now you're going to come over here, and you're going to change this back to cutting. You're going to take it out of setting and put it back into cutting, and the head will just rise up, just like that. Okay, now we're going to come back here. Go to our parameter settings. Our cutting depth has to be at 0. If you don't have it at 0, you're going to push the die all the way through. And so at this point, we will do our first test cut. You'll see it's just coming down and touching the top. Okay. You would look to check your material, make sure you're cutting all the way through. We'll throw something in there just so we have something to play with right now. Okay. Okay, I can see it's partially cutting, but not cutting all the way. So we will turn up our pressure just a little bit. And we will test again. Okay. Now we're cutting all the way through. That's what you want. So we were at 0 when we first started, and we turned it up to 4. That's where it finally cut. Okay, so once you're done with that, you'll be able to turn your press to full auto, and it'll just cut all by itself at this point. Okay? And you see the rollers at the back, they're turning after every cut. That's pushing your material forward. So literally all you have to do at this point is pick up the pieces. If I want to stop it at this point, okay, stop, stop, stop. The light curtains are off this press right now, but also we could put our hand in and the light curtain would stop it as well. So we'll push this, stops it, moves the head to its highest position, and ready for you to do what you need to do next.